Everyone, and welcome to today's webinar for the Culturally Competent Curating Inclusive Spaces for Black Women in Collegiate Recovery. My name is Orlando Cooper, one of the graduate assistants at IHEC, and I'll be your moderator. I'm assisting Madison, the Assistant Director for the Illinois Higher Education Center for Alcohol, Other Drug, and Violent Prevention, and we are very excited to be hosting today's event. Before I hand over the microphone, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about today's webinar and the GoToWebinar platform. For those of you new to using GoToWebinar, you will see the control panel at the right of your screen. This is where you will find the question box that you can type and submit to at the end of the presentation. All attendees will be muted for today's program, but that doesn't mean you can still participate. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Allison Smith.
Hello, everyone. So let me go ahead and get my camera on. I'm adjusting a little bit too. There we go. So, hi, everyone. I am Dr. Allison Smith, and I am not going to hold you any longer. I am going to jump straight into sharing my screen, and we can get started. So here. All right, so I want you all to do me a quick favor. Drop your name and what institution you're at in the chat so I can kind of see who's here, because I'm going to tell you all about myself, and I would love to hear a little bit about you all as well. So feel free in the chat to drop your name and whatever institution you're at and whatever you do there. You know, the 12 jobs that you're probably doing at your institution, right? All right, so there we go. Get situated here. I am just going to hide that. All right, so today's webinar is for the culturally competent, curating inclusive spaces for Black women in collegiate recovery. And I'm gonna hit on why I kind of talk about that particular space, that part of like the health and wellness AOD kind of prevention piece. Probably hope I turn the clicker on, right? So obligatory about me, I am a native of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I am the youngest of 7 kids. I could live off a diet of hot wings and crawfish if it would not kill me, and we have amazing food down here. I'm a 2009 graduate of Southern University. I got my bachelor's in psychology, and I got my master's in public administration from LSU in 2011. And then I got my PhD from LSU in healthcare, in higher education administration in 2016 for the last time ever going to school. So I worked at LSU for 8 years. I started as a graduate assistant through my graduate program, and then our office actually moved its entire suite of programming to the Louisiana Board of Regents, where I currently work on my day-to-day thing, right? So when our office got started at LSU, we started out as a Campus Community Coalition for Change. You don't have to remember all those acronyms, but initially, what you need to know is that our office started from the 1997 binge drinking and hazing related death of Benjamin Wynn, and was funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to participate in their A Matter of Degree program. And so what that did is gave LSU and 9 other colleges money to employ environmental strategies to reduce high binge drinking rates. Did some things through there. We started our statewide coalition. So you all have IHEC, we have LAHEC, the Louisiana Higher Education Coalition, pretty similar, right? And we have our Louisiana coalition that was birthed out of that particular process. We're currently funded by the Louisiana Department of Health, and now we sit at the Louisiana Board of Regents because in 2017, LSU found itself in a very similar situation with the death of Maxwell Gruber. And what we saw there is that our governor at the time noticed that, hey, we have a whole higher education board and there's nothing at that board that focuses on prevention and education in our campuses. And so the decision was made to move our program to the Board of Regents. So we still do all of our same programmatic activities, but we have a little bit more power being at the Board of Regents, right? A little bit more personal, 2 things I'm still upset about. They wasted a whole bunch of time doing Game of Thrones. I feel like they wasted 8 seasons. I'm glad I jumped in around season 5 and then played catch up. And then I don't know if I want Lawrence and Issa together. Season 5 starts on October 24th. If you haven't marked your calendars already, that insecure, and it's the last season, so I'm kind of sad about that, right? So today I'll talk to you about a couple of things. The first one is going to be family. Ways we can create culturally inclusive spaces. The very first one is family. And so when I'll go give you a couple definitions, right? But I don't want you to overthink them. I don't want this to be complicated, convoluted, or any of those things. We're just going to use like this very bolded part. A family is a system of related and unrelated individuals integrated by pattern of social relationship and mutual help. And I think that's the really key part, the unrelated individuals. That we all know that we have people that we consider to be family, to be closer than blood, to be closer than some of the people that are, born by us, closer to us. We have people, we have these varying, wide, expansive definitions of family, and that those are the people that even if they're not related to me, they show me love and support, mutual help and aid, and that's how they become my family. And that part is really important. All right, and so A Different World indeed, right? So one of my favorite TV shows is A Different World. It is literally like I cannot explain to you how much I love A Different World. Like so much so that when I was little, I wanted to go to Hillman College. If you're not familiar with the show A Different World, which ran on NBC from 1997, from 1987 to 1993, it explored the world of an HBCU, and it covered all types of like very hard hitting topics at the time. So it was like alcohol and drug use. There's an episode where they covered binge drinking. There was an episode where they covered sexual assault, and they were having a conversation. Wait, I thought it was my job to make her say yes. It's like, no, that is not how this worked. They covered consent. They covered HIV and the AIDS epidemic as it was happening. They covered the Rodney King beating, the Watts riots. They covered all of these very apartheid in South Africa. They were covering all of these very culturally relevant, specific things that were happening during this time. And so as a young child, I really, it was kind of like a cult classic. It's very popular in African American communities, this particular show. And there's some research that the White House's HBCU initiatives that they've done, where they saw the growth trajectory of enrollment at HBCU skyrocket during the time that A Different World was on TV. And the years immediately preceding, they were able to track the growth from the explosion of this particular show. And so, like I said, when I was little, I wanted to go to Hillman College. But if you remember from my slide a second ago, I told you that I went to Southern University. That's because Hillman College does not exist. Of the 107 HBCUs there are, historically Black colleges and universities, Hillman College does not exist. It was a made up fictional college for the purpose of A Different World. But I saw so much of myself in there, and I wanted to be there. And so the slogan, the motto for the college is "Dos Nondum Te Confici," and that translates from Latin to "God is not yet finished yet." And so there was a particular weaving into this particular show with family. We'll talk about religiosity and some kinship, some of those things that they kind of wove intentionally into the show, and what those impacts can look like on your campus. So told you about my own Hillman experience. So when I realized, like y'all, it really caught me off guard when I realized that Hillman was not a real college. And so I went to Southern University, and that is where I got my first experiences, right, with peer health, peer education, not knowing at the time that's what it was called. And so for us, that initial outlet, we didn't have like peer educators, like so to speak. But we had the psychology club, and we had Psychi, which is an honor society for psychology and other social science majors. And so when we had that, that's where we did like all of our peer health, our sex education, our HIV/AIDS awareness, our alcohol and other drugs research. So lo and behold, I was one of the students who was helping pass out core alcohol and drug surveys at Southern University through the psychology department. So I run the office that facilitates the core alcohol and drug survey across our state. And I know a lot of you all with IHIC are familiar with the core alcohol and drug survey from the Core Institute at Southern Illinois University over in Carbondale. And so this is my first foray into like peer health. This is us at a faculty student basketball game where we did win, by the way. So don't laugh at my, we won. And so this was like this is again pictures from that. We did bowling. When we were the first three rows of pictures, the bottom one, that is us selling food. We were doing a concession sale. We don't raise money for Take Back the Night, which is an annual event that's held in October for victims for survivors of domestic abuse. we were raising funds to purchase toiletries and personal items, things of that sort, intertwining all of these things together, becoming. And so one thing that's really unique about HBCUs, no matter which particular one that you look at, their mission statement, they're typically we see three facets of universities. It's heavily focused on either research, service, or teaching. Typically for HBCUs, they are typically more so teaching colleges, and they lean heavily on service. And so one of those things is that they really ingratiate the feel of family into their institutions. And then you'll see it in their mission statements. Like Southern is family, pride, tradition, and excellence. They hone in on the family aspect, that you're becoming family with a group of people who are not related to you, but that are there to help you and aid you in your mutual goal to graduation. So one of the things that one of my favorite characters on A Different World was actually Mr. Gaines. So Mr. Gaines ran what's called the Pit. It is in their student union. There was the place where everybody goes to eat, everybody hangs out. There's multiple scenes, lots of it is shot there in the Pit. Mr. Gaines was the owner of the Pit. He had something to say to everybody. He's the person where he didn't care who you were, what you did. He gave his 2 cents to everybody. It didn't matter. And so one of the characters I'll talk about a little bit, Whitley, and we'll talk about how just it didn't matter who was receiving the advice. If you felt that the person had your best interest at heart, how much easier it was to take that. And so one of the things that A Different World did between seasons 1 and season 2. So initially in season 1, so this is not the cast of season 1. You may notice some people are missing. So if you're not familiar, A Different World is a spinoff from The Cosby Show. And so it was done as Denise was going off to college, and they spun it off into Denise going off to her first year of college. Denise was Lisa Bonet. She is not in this picture. This is from season 2, one of the later seasons. Lisa Bonet, Marissa Tomei were also in this particular show, but they were not getting the ratings that they thought they should be getting. They were like, something's like, we know we have the right idea, but something's missing. And so one of the things they did is they brought on amazing super producer, amazing talent, Debbie Allen, who just won an award the other night at the Emmys. They brought in Debbie Allen, and for seasons 2 through the rest of the seasons, and they did an HBCU tour, and they talked to them. They're like, so we know we have a good idea, but something's missing. Something's not right. Like we feel like we're on the right track, but we're not really translating this experience, this HBCU experience, over to what we know it could be. And one of the things they found out, they was like you're missing like the people on campus. You're missing the real people, like the actual people. And so that's where we get into the idea of fictional kinship. It's like parents and other adults are taught children to address older persons unrelated to them by blood or marriage by his aunt or uncle. And so it's very common, oh, that's my play cousin, or that's my auntie, or that's my uncle. I have several aunties that are not my aunties, but they've known my mom for like 25, 30 years, longer than I've been alive, 40 years, 50 years, but that's my aunt. And so because we've decided to be family, we've decided to have kinship, and it literally traces back to different African and ancestral roots, is that their extended family is fictional kin. That whole saying that it takes a village to raise a child, that everybody has an invested outcome and input in that child's outcome. And so let me say this, political leanings aside, not a political statement, that's where you see things like Auntie Maxine, that you see an entire generation of younger Black people designate Maxine Waters as auntie. Because that is a person who fictively they feel at working the best we have, that it's auntie. Like you would never just call her Maxine. Never. There's a clip. It's one of those things where you begin to understand it's more of a cultural and respecting, is that you can have people who are not related or in certain positions who will begin to speak life and will be able to build bridges and build community among African American staff, faculty, and students on your campus. And so one of the things about fictive kinship, and so this is Mr. Gaines. He is talking to Whitley, one of the more famous stars of the story, Whitley Gilbert. She is a legacy student. Her parents are alums. Her parents are rich. She is very much affluent young Black lady at this institution. And this is Mr. Gaines. He's giving her one of his life lessons. And that's the thing. He's the owner. He's the cook. And he always say he's the cook. He's the owner, but he's the head cook. But it is the importance that she is willing to listen to him because she feels he has an invested interest in her time at Hillman. She believes that he's telling her things that would only help her. She doesn't believe he's telling anything that would hurt her. Yes, he's a cook. No, he's not an admissions counselor. He's not anybody in the health center. He's not a counselor. He's not in wellness. He's not in student affairs. He's a cook. But he cares enough to invest and to pour into her, just given the opportunity. And so that was one of the, and so seasons 2 through 5, 2 through 6, you see they play up those relationships. So people like Mr. Gaines and different people who have professors who are no longer teaching certain students, who they still have this relationship where they're able to help lead, guide, and direct, and help also teach those students how to navigate some of the challenges that are on campus. And so I had my own Mr. Gaines. And so in the psychology department, that was Dr. J, that was Miss J. Miss J knew everything about everything she could. She knows the person, if you have a paper that you need to get signed and they're out for a week, the person who needs to sign it out, she knows how to get it to them. Like, she's like, oh, give me that. Then we go to Bible study together. Give me that paper. I'm gonna get that paper signed. She's that kind of person. And it's those kind of people where their titles don't necessarily infer the amount of importance, power, or just love that they have for the students that they can help serve on your campus. So yeah, you may be short, because immediately we know that we can't go out and just hire an entire bunch of diverse faculty and staff, and we would love to just have all this money to hire these people. But if your state is like our state, which I've had several conversations with some higher ed folks in Illinois, you all don't have a ton of money either. We neither do we, right? And so one of the things we can do is to leverage the roles of fictive kinship on our campus. Find people who the students already trust, they're invested in, and that students listen to. There are several people, like we clown about it to this day, me and my best friends, that Miss Betty. I would say we want to go on campus to go see Miss Betty. Miss Betty was a person who worked in one of the student union places, the food places, the pasta places. Miss Betty made the best pasta in the entire union, no matter how many people worked there. But she was always sweet, always kind. She was always telling us, no, you need to know. She's like, well, don't y'all have class now? We sitting down, we're talking too long, we're clowning, we're having the attention. She's like, don't y'all have like a 1 o'clock class y'all need to get to? Well, Miss Betty, it's on like 12:50. We'll be there. No, y'all need to get there so y'all can be ready to learn. And so, all right, Miss Betty, all right. And we get up and we go to class. One, we value that she cared enough about us to stop and give input. Again, the titles don't matter. It's the importance of the fictive kinship, the relationship that different people with your campus have built, and how you can leverage and empower those people on campus to help you bridge some of those staffing gaps that you may have on your campus. So if you have any questions about family and fictive kinship, you can drop those in the chat. And if not, I will move on to our next piece, which will be religiosity, right? So we're gonna go ahead.
And just a heads up,
Yeah.
I don't think you can see the questions, so if we do get questions, I can read them for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Orlando. Great. All right, so talking about religiosity, and I said that I would give you very simple definition because we don't want to like make this very hard. It's, I promise you, the quality of state of being religious feeling or devotion. From Merriam-Webster, nothing to, that's it. I'm not talking about a particular religion, a particular practice or anything, just the quality or state of being religious or feeling religious devotion. One of the things that lots of research tells us that African Americans, in particular, Black people, are highly religious. No matter what sector, no matter what type of practice, that there is a huge adherence to spiritual beliefs. Whether that's something, any type of religion you can think of, that they have a very high share of people in their people who participate in religious practices. And so I don't want you to overthink this. It's just religion, the state of being religious or not. And so this is from my own dissertation. So I interviewed 8 Black women who are hired, who are student affairs administrators who do not do diversity work. So they don't work in like African American cultural centers, Black student unions, multicultural affairs. They don't work in anything racial or gender specific. No women's centers, no cultural centers, cross cultural. They do things like IT, fundraising, residential housing, things like that. One of the things that came out was that these Black women administrators who participated in the project actively chose to be guided and anchored by their spirituality and purposely assert and position themselves as beacons of hope, light, and love in an ivory tower that does not always reciprocate those same feelings. Each of the 8 women all talked about, and that wasn't in a particular question that I asked them, it was a theme that came out. I was like, my faith, my spiritual belief, that is the thing that keeps me going. That is the thing that allows me to connect with so many different students. Even if we don't share the same spiritual or faith background, it's the fact that we're talking about something that's intrinsically important to us. And if we're open enough to share that intimate part of ourselves, it helps us connect with students. And so when I said that these people do not work, these women did not work in like diversity related areas, it is, and that this was a direct, this came directly from my own experiences, why I did my dissertation research on what I did, because I am a Black woman who does not work in a diversity related field. And typically in higher education, that is where we see Black women administrators in those types of positions. And so I would hear my friends all the time talk about, oh, it is working with my students. It's like being able to serve students that look like me, help them navigate college, help them. That is the thing that keeps me going. And I was like, well, I'm kind of getting burned out. And I don't know why I keep doing that, because in my entire 8 years being on campus at LSU, I never worked with a student of color. No student of color, not a single one. I worked at alcohol and other drug prevention. And I worked on the end where we were managing a statewide coalition, and I worked where we were working to start a collegiate recovery program there. And I never saw a student of color my entire time there. And I was like, what helps keep me here? Why do I keep doing this? If I really want to help, and I know that there are students that are out here that are looking that they're reporting, we've had internal surveys that students were looking for faculty and staff of color to help them navigate the campus. And so for me, that led to me being involved in the Black Faculty and Staff Caucus at LSU, so where I was able to help put on programs, raise money, scholarship money for students of color at LSU to help them matriculate, provide professional development, mentorship through those particular programs at the campus. And again, I was very surprised that the adherence of spiritual belief came out, because that was something that I purposely excluded as a researcher who was a part of this very particular demographic. It was something I excluded as to not, I didn't ask it as a question because I didn't want it to be where I was like, hey, I think this, so no. So it was something that naturally and organically came out as well. So one, what we found that leaning into what that is actually helps to build connection and strengthen relationships on our campus. All right, so musically speaking, I'm talking about like faith and things like that. I'll share a couple music clips with you all, and I really want to point them out in a second. I'll tie them in. I just want to tell you that if you weren't aware, June was Black Music Appreciation Month. This is the proclamation from President Biden on June 1st. From says the second sentence says, from early spirituals born out of the unconscionable hardships of slavery to the creation of folk and gospel to the evolution of rhythm and blues and jazz to the ascendance of rock and roll and rap and hip hop. Black music has shaped our society, entertained and inspired us, and it helped write and tell the story of our nation. So one of the things that he talked about in that proclamation was from the early spirituals and how in gospel music and how it has been used throughout eternity, like our nation's history, how we've just used it, one particularly for African Americans. And so one of the things, there's a thing called Versus. If you all have not heard of it, it is hosted by Swiss Beats. He is a Black producer, and Timbaland, who's another Black producer. They started it last year during the pandemic, just playing around, and it's taken off into like this $1 million idea, that multi-million-dollar idea that they've had. They pit artists with similar catalogs against each other. And one of the ones they did was, which was a random one they did on a Sunday, they did one like a time of healing. And they did Kirk Franklin, who is a famous Black gospel artist, and they did Fred Hammond, who is another. They did Hezekiah Walker. I'm sorry, Bishop Hezekiah Walker and Pastor John P. Key, who are two very legendary Black gospel singers. And they had tons of people watching, and there were people who were in the comments saying, I'm not even like a Christian or anything, but this is music that is uplifting. This is music, this is encouraging, and that people who don't even have who don't prescribe to certain religious sects, that they still are able to, one, glean things from different music and help process those particular traumas. And so this is a quick graphic. It's not really that important. I want to show you this. This is called Music Sermon. Every year, there's a young lady by the name Naima she does a Black Music Month challenge, and it's like different things. Like now, day 12, you post your favorite R&B duet, and it's all like about Black artists and things of that sort. And as I was going through, one of them talked about like your favorite like gospel song, whatever, and I started going through it, and I stumbled upon something that I was like, I've never noticed this before. And once I started to listen to it, I could not get it out of my head. And so this is a clip from, if I mentioned one of the pastor, I mentioned Pastor John P. Key in the New Life Community Choir. And I want you to hear, it's about a 10-second clip, and you'll hear in just a second.
You deliver yourself. The Lord is given us. Deliver me from cocaine. My life is not the same.
And so, if you missed it, he said, deliver me from crack cocaine. My life has not been the same. Pastor John P. Key is very open. He talks about how he was a cocaine, not only a crack cocaine user, but a dealer, and how that God delivered him, and that's not anything that he chooses to do anymore, and how it gives back in community. He helps people with transitional housing, things of that sort. But he talks about he wove it into very popular gospel music, and you'll see a theme in a second. And so this is another gospel clip that I want you all to hear, and just hear it for a second.
For about 2 years, I watched Christian television. I was in and out, and I bought a Bible, and I would throw away all of the paraphernalia to smoke crack with and smoke this, and we used to make it and make our own. I threw it all in the trash, and then I'd go get it again, and we'd get high. And one night, as I was getting loaded, I began to pass out. Then my head hit the wall. And I began to slide down the wall, and as I came to, all of my bodily fluids were doing the wrong thing, and I was dying. But I had a praying grandmother, and I knew enough to call on the name of Jesus.
So, and that clip was Helen's testimony by a famous gospel artist by the name of Helen Baylor. And again, she invokes the fact of her faith, is that is what helped her over her addiction. And so you'll start to see a theme here. And so I'll show you one more clip. This is a clip that goes viral, and I'll tell you this, it goes viral every couple of years. It's gone viral a couple of times when the singer, what she says, and I'm like, huh, I don't understand. And people kind of make fun of the clip, but I'll tie it all together. I promise you. Give me a second, I'll tie it together. Okay, and that was a clip from Let the Glory by Pastor Hezekiah Walker in the Love Fellowship Crusade Choir. And that clip goes viral pretty often. When she says, put it down, crackhead. And so as I'm listening to this clip, I'm going through like, there's something in particular. Again, this is a gospel choir that's invoking their faith and mixing it with the fact of being free from addiction. And so one of the things that really hit me, and I'm like, wait, there's something different. I knew something was up with all these songs, but I knew it. Wait, hold on, wait. And then I went back and I looked and I pulled all the stats from the songs. And they all came out in 1994. And so this is coming off, all of these songs, very popular, came out, and they were very, very popular songs, very popular artists. All the artists are so popular to this day, and very popular songs. One of the things that came out, and I realized like this is 1994 as we are coming out of quote unquote the war on drugs, the crack epidemic, the cocaine epidemic that's ravaging Black communities. And to see that these particular gospel artists have leaned into their faith to address the addiction recovery piece of their communities was something that I hadn't considered before. And so when I talk about that religiosity, that leaning on your faith, want to help move those recovery and prevention pieces along, that it's not something that has to be set aside. That there are ways for some people that is a plus that helps move them along. And so one of the things that the year I was born, when she said put it down, crackhead, the one who smokes crack, that word was introduced into the dictionary in 1986, the year that I was born. And so what we've seen a shift in the language and change about stigma, about calling people things based on what they use, or a dope fiend or things of that. So we've seen the language change. We've become more understanding as a society using person first language. So now we wouldn't say the term crackhead. Now it's a person who uses crack. Finding that understanding, that compassion that wasn't always there. And so I could have a whole conversation about the war on drugs and how those things were the systemic injustices and oppressions that happened there, and how crack was treated as opposed to cocaine. But I think we understand enough those disparities, and so we can understand that for some people, that bringing in the religiosity aspect will help. And then one, that also it opens you up to new partners that you may or may not understand. So if someone practices a faith tradition or something that you don't understand, that you're not a part of, and it's okay that you're not a part of that. So I'm not telling you to go go join all these faiths. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is understanding that there's leverage there sometimes for people who can get through to people, African American, like staff, students, and faculty, that you may not be able to get through to. There may be a local church, mosque, synagogue, something in your community that has a high influence, high impact with your Black community members that you may need to bring in as a partner, just because you've never thought to include them before. So just understanding that the role that religiosity can play, right? All right, so why are we doing this? Why did I bring all the part about the addiction and religiosity and all that? Because one, it's National Recovery Month, right? Recovery is for everyone, for every person, for every family, for every community. And that we know that there is no look to recovery, there is no set of person, there's no demographic that we can think of that addiction cannot cut across. And we know that recovery is possible for everyone. And we want to be sure that we're building collegiate recovery spaces that is inclusive for everyone, for Black women, for white men, for white women, for Black women, for Black men, Indigenous people, everyone, our transgender colleagues and students. We want to be sure that we're building things culturally competent and culturally competent ways that are able to sustain the full humanity of all that come through our doors and our programs. So nothing is because I really do believe in you. I believe that each and every one of you have the ability to help create a fair, inclusive, just, kind, diverse, loving, equitable, compassionate, and accessible world for everybody that we come across. I don't think that it takes anything away from any of us to help bring more people in. And so being able to use the privilege and the power that we all have in different situations, sometimes we have more power, sometimes we have less, but we all have something. Being able to use that to make sure that other people have a seat at the tables that we sit at. And so now we'll get into some pieces about cultural competence, right? We'll get into the fun part. And so one of my favorite shows is Fixer Upper. I like Chip and Joanna Gaines, so you all, I like them, right? So there's always this very weird part that happens in the show where they're like, yeah, something happened and we got to spend more money than we were prepared to. So somebody needs to call them and tell them that we need to spend more money. And they both kind of go like, I don't know, well, you call them. And so two things happen. One of the bigger things that usually happens is a structural issue. Like there's something on the foundation where we can't really do anything else, because if we put any more pressure, any more weight, anything new, it will crumble. There's no way to put anything new on top of the current foundation that we have. So usually at that point, they pretty much tell them they have two options. They can repair before expanding. Like, we can take some of the money you were going to do something else with, and we can I know you really wanted the new marble countertop, match your marble floor, but because you have a foundation issue, we really need to take that money. Unless you're going to go over budget, you need to take that money to repair the foundation before we can go any further. Or what ends up happening, if it's a new project, you can construct it properly. Once you notice the difference, we can just build it new. We see the issue now, we'll just build on top of it. So what I want to encourage you all to do is to take a moment to be sure that you're addressing any structural issues that you have in your programming, right? Being sure that either before you expand, that you're looking at any issues you have, making sure that what you have to build on is stable and steady. Or if you're starting from scratch, you're building new programs, that you construct them properly. And what I really mean by that is this evaluation. SAM's a strategic prevention framework. We all love the little spit flower, but being sure that we're evaluating the things that we're doing. Not just we're doing it because every third Monday in October, this is what we do. This is the program that we do because we've done it for 6 years in a row. Is it effective? Is it serving the people that it should be serving? Is it ethical? Have standards changed over time? Are we making sure that as we start to expand and repeat programs that they're sustainable and they're culturally competent? When is the last time you actually evaluated all of your programs? Sun right? So I want to make sure that we're getting that part because sustainability and cultural competence, those are the pieces that overlap all 5 pieces of the SPIF, that we should always making sure that our programs are sustainable and culturally competent. In our assessment, when we do our assessment, we're starting new programs. We're looking at capacity. Who have we brought in? Who are we missing from this particular piece of the pie? Being able to be sure that we're assessing, looking at capacity building, we look at our planning and implementation and evaluation, that we're looking at cultural competence across all 5 of those aspects. And so one of our favorites, and I've heard Eric Davidson talk about this a couple of times, evidence-based programs, practices and programs, things of that sort. We talk about how long it takes for something to become an evidence-based practice and program. It takes a pretty long time, much longer than the semesters that we're typically used to working in. And so what we really know that as far as the literature is concerned, that we consider that evidence-based practice, that is the gold standard. That is where we get technical, we get expertise, clinical experience, and patient values. That is the sweet spot of all of those. But my question to you is, who gets to decide what's evidence-based? Who gets to call the program evidence-based? And when we call those programs evidence-based, do we have everybody at the table who's looking at them? Do we have culturally diverse tables who are just making these decisions? Or are we just have the same old people making the same old decisions for diverse populations? Who gets to say what is evidence-based? Who gets to decide that it's time to review a program? Who gets to decide, let's put funding behind, we believe in this idea, let's try it, let's see, let's do research. Who gets to decide that? And so what I want you to do is picture it. So there was a young lady by the name of Samantha. She was amazing. She was a student at Howard University, an HBCU, one of the more prestigious HBCUs. You'll hear about homecoming at Howard coming up. It is huge. It is a very huge thing. It's a private HBCU. And so one of the things that Samantha was doing is her starting the Collegiate recovery program there, she wanted to do what's called a cipher. A cipher is basically a short video of people all rapping about the same topic. Right? They're all rapping, let's say, and she wanted to do one about recovery, like there's help available, collegiate recovery, things like that. She was told that they couldn't use the funding because it wasn't an evidence-based program. It's like, oh no, you couldn't do that, you can't do that, that's not gonna work, that's not evidence-based, you can't do that. So picture, and there's no way that you have a student who's a leader on a campus, who's a young African-American woman, who's very involved in campus things at an HBCU, who is one of their more notorious, the things they're famous for is Howard's Homecoming, which is hugely centered around music. There's no way that you tell her that a music video wouldn't work at her HBCU, right? That wouldn't work. There's no way that would work, right? So she gets told no. And then I'm like, how could they not say no? My HBCU did ciphers. We did homecoming ciphers, things of that stuff, because we know why so many HBCUs have them, because they're wildly popular among HBCU students. And so those are the kind of missed opportunities. And so last year, when the world was shutting down due to the pandemic, the BET Awards, they decided to have they did a virtual award show. And what did they do? They did a cipher presented by Sprite. They did the 2020 cipher at the BET Hip Hop Awards, and they were phenomenal. They were a smash hit online, ratings through the roof, everywhere. You know why? Because ciphers are effective for African American communities. There's multiple ciphers. There was one on women's empowerment, where it was all women rappers. There was one on, let's say it was health and like protecting yourself during COVID. There was one that had rappers rapping around specific topics. There are multiple ciphers. But again, we told the student that she didn't know what was best for her campus. So that was a huge missed opportunity because we have to be sure that we're doing culturally relevant programming. She was saying present the same stats and facts and things like that about collegiate recovery, about prevention. She was saying present. She was going to get students to wrap those same facts in a different way that was culturally relevant and competent for her audience, and we told her no. We have to understand that sometimes we're not the best cultural authority on certain populations, and that's cultural humility. Understanding that the people that are a part of those communities are the best apt to describe or help instruct us on how to best serve their communities. So I know that in HB, that for me, that it will be very popular to do a cipher at Southern University still to this day. But if I was going to a campus with a large population of indigenous students and we're doing programming for them, even if I'm the one coming in with the funding, with the facts, the expertise, the knowledge, what do? That's an opportunity for me to practice cultural humility because I say, hey, give me some indigenous students you have here. Let me hear from them. Let me ask them what they want. This is the information I want to present to them, and how would it be best received by their audience? How would this make sense for them to hear it, for them to see it? Does it make sense for us to do posters, or do they really prefer QR codes? Does it make sense to do X, Y, Z? Does it make sense to use these colors? Does it make sense to tie it in this way? Understanding that we're not always the best source for cultural competence on certain things, but this is the key. You can ask for help. There's always the option to ask for help. And so I've never gone into a situation where I've asked someone in a spirit of cultural humility to say, how can I best serve you in a way that connects with you and your audience and your community members? I've never been told, I don't want you to help me in that way. And a lot of times it's the first time I've been asked. So just being sure that we're asking people, how can we best serve them? And so with that, I want to talk about food. I know you probably already had lunch. I haven't yet, but there's that. So today's the first day of fall, and we actually have a little breeze here in Louisiana, so I might get some gumbo. So I'm asking my mom, right? And so you have two of my favorite dishes. I'm a person who I love fall weather. I like soups, stews, and gumbos and all that kind of thing. So on the left, we have tomato soup. It's a roasted red pepper tomato soup. When you look at that, we know that there's tomato in there. But we know that there's also heavy cream in there. There's roasted red peppers. There was some garlic in there. There's a couple other things. But when we look at it, we overwhelmingly see tomatoes. We don't know anything else. We know it's tomatoes. And so what we want to be careful is that when we bring diverse faculty, staff, and students to our campuses and our institutions, that we're not bringing them in to assimilate. That saying that, yeah, we think you're a really great diverse person. Now come in to be just like us. Come in and blend in just like us. And you don't look any different, you don't talk any different, you don't do anything different, you come in to be just like us. But when we put you up, you're diverse, but we want you to be just like this. That's assimilation, and that's not the freedom to give people the space to be themselves, right? So the next one, what I much prefer is multiculturalism. That is where everybody's invited to the party to be themselves. And so that is a pot of gumbo. It is on my stove. That is my stove that we had gumbo. So here we have gumbo for Christmas, and that is seafood gumbo. There is sausage, crab, shrimp. There's all kinds of stuff in there. But what you can see is that you can see each distinct piece. Nothing looks like the other. They're all distinct pieces working together to make an amazing dish. And so I just want to encourage you all to always go for the gumbo. That one that I promise you the gumbo tastes much better. Yes, tomato soup is good, but I promise you gumbo is better. One, allowing people, our diverse faculty, staff, and students to be themselves fully, wholly, and authentically on our campuses. I promise you it makes for a much better campus community. It makes our program stronger. It makes our students better. All right, and so there's still some work to be done, right? Because we're still all works in progress. And so this is me. So I'm not really being like super, but I'm just showing you. This is me in a bunch of different hairstyles. And what's really important about this is that I went to work on all those days. And that may not seem like a lot, but it's a lot to me because there was at one point I would not wear my hair braided or styled differently to work. I only wore my hair straight to work. I remember having a conversation with my sister, and she said, I thought you were getting your hair braided this weekend. I said, well, no, not this weekend, because we have a potential meeting with a funder to try to get some money for collegiate recovery, and I don't want to give them any reason not to fund us. And as I said it, her eyes got big, and she looked like a ton of bricks at her. And I said, you're right, don't say it. Because I realized that, one, not only did I not want to live a life or work at a place that I felt like I could not be myself, I could not wear my hair the way I normally wear my hair, I didn't want to work with people who would work with my students who did that. And so I was like, you know what? It is what it is. And so that is part of the freedom that I found in my own journey of self-discovery during my PhD program, that I want to be able to show up fully and authentically as myself, and I deserve that right the way we all do deserve to show up as ourselves at work. And so there's still some work to be done. The Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair Act, the Crown Act, which is being sponsored by Dove, is still aiming to be passed in multiple states. So it literally is just to ban employee discrimination based on hair. That's literally what it is. And so there's still some work to be done. And I kid you not when I say there's still work to be done. Over 80% of women, Black women, say, I have to change my hair from its natural state to fit in at the office. It's not a rule. It's not in the rule book, but it's the unspoken atmospheres and that we create in our offices that says that it's not acceptable. So being sure that we're able to create spaces that are open to all of our employees. And so this is where the Crown Act is currently. And this is a map on the website. There was legislation filed in Illinois that did not pass, that was not passed. It was filed in Louisiana, right? It was filed, but it did not pass this past legislative session. It's in the blue dots. Those are different cities where they passed city ordinances. So Louisiana, New Orleans, and Shreveport have passed ordinances where it's illegal there. The Crown Act is a city ordinance there, but it failed in our state legislature this year. And I will regale you all with the tale of how that happened. And so there we are right there. And so this is some tweets from one of our local reporters from the AP. The bill initially passed in our state Senate 36-0. We are I am in Louisiana, right? So I'll shape our political climate for you. We are in very deep red Louisiana. We have the only Democratic governor in the South. So typically everything we do is bipartisan because we have no choice, right? And so we have a very strong history, like our Republicans working with Democrats, because there's no supermajority, and so they always end up having to work together on something. And so it passed our house, our state house, with 36-0 vote, but then it failed in our state Senate. It failed in the House. They got bogged down on a bill to ban employee discrimination based on natural hairstyle, a bill aimed at protecting Black people from discrimination. And the reporter knows there was little debate in the Senate, and that was May of this year. So when I say there's still work to be done, there's still work to be done, that our House members were debating whether or not it was okay to discriminate based on hairstyle. All right, and so what are some ways you can do recruitment and retention for Black women and other people of color in collegiate recovery, right, in those spaces? So I'll give you 2 ways by Jackson. These are retention strategies I amplified in my dissertation. One of them is to use retention as a recruitment strategy. One, the best thing you can do is to retain the people that you have, the people of color that you have. Treat them well so that they want to invest into them. Because if you keep getting people of color and they keep leaving, I can assure you they're telling each other. And so I am part of a group called Black Staff. It is a Black Student Affairs Professionals. We have over 14,000 members on Facebook, and we post jobs in there all the time and things like that. And people say, "What's the climate there? And there are people trying to like, everybody keeps leaving this particular institution for this particular reason. So your best thing is retention, it's recruitment. But you know how differently it goes when somebody posts a job and they'll say, hey, this is my current position. I'm about to leave and go to another position. I got a promotion or something, but this is an amazing place to work. I would recommend working here. If you want to talk with me offline, you can instant message me. We can talk about it. I think it's an amazing place to work. That is one of your best recruitment strategies. And then providing a community orientation program. I mentioned that sometimes, so I have friends who have gone to very, very, very white communities where their campuses are, where the campus is diverse, but the surrounding community is very, very, very non-diverse. And so one of the things is being able to provide a community orientation program. And that's not necessarily you being able to do it, connecting them with people on campus, people of color on campus who can help provide some insight for them. Because even for my dissertation, one of the young ladies, she was having a very hard time adjusting to Baton Rouge. And she was like, I kept asking my coworker, she's like, I was trying to find the hair store, the hair stove. So the hair store and the hair stove are very different things, right? And so she was asking for the hair stove, and she's a young Black lady with natural hair, and they kept like seriously, you have to partner them with people who can help them connect to the local community, because sometimes even when we're lacking the connection on campus, if we can get plugged into the local community, it helps us put down roots and help us get more connected. And so when she was asking for the hair stove, they kept telling her what Sally's was. She's a young Black lady with natural hair. She was like, and she said, and it was starting to affect her confidence, because one, it was coming up time for her to get her hair redone. She's like, I don't want to have to drive all the way back home to Memphis to go get my hair done because I can't find what I need here. And she's like, I just feel like I cannot get settled, because her hair was such a big part of her personality and her confidence. And so when she meant Sal, that isn't what she meant. And I was like, wait, and so we're doing the interview at the time. I was like, wait, I was like, you looking for the hairstyle? So this is what she's actually referring to. She's referring to like hair crowns, beauty giants, beauty supply stores, which are not like a Sally's hair store. They have a much wider selection. It is very common for any hair stove in any city, USA, even in Illinois, to look like this. Any beauty supplies, beauty giants, that they have a ton of things, range of colors, multiple brands of products, things like that. When she was able to find this location, she was able to get plugged in. Now she was able to start settling in. She's like, that made such a big difference. She hit me up like a week and a half later. She's like, girl, I feel so much better. I was able to finally get my hair done to get my twist out right. So being able to get connected to the local community, her people in her department weren't able to connect with her on that level. But one of them referred to me, was like, hey, actually, one of my homegirls, she's doing a survey. And she's like, you may actually want to talk to her. She may be able to help you connect to some different things at Baton Rouge. And so that's how we were able to get her plugged in. I'm not asking you to become a cultural guru or expert. I'm asking you to make connections to people who can help facilitate that for your Black women and other people of color on campus. And so if you don't think hair is that big of a deal, I want to tell you that it is. And this person's name is Kizzy PhD. And it says, Black women who are going to academia, help me find someone to do my hair in your negotiations. It sounds petty, but I have spent hours to no avail trying to find a single blowout in Boston. Like, where do people get their hair done? And so this is from a young lady who was she had taken a new position at Johns Hopkins University. You may or may not recognize her name, Kizzy PhD. You may or may not recognize her picture. And I'd say that it's really important because you may recognize her name. Her name is actually Dr. Kizzmekia Kizzy Corbett. She is one of the leading vaccine researchers that helped to develop the mRNA technology for the COVID-19 vaccine for Moderna. I'm telling you that it's really important helping your Black women get connected to your campus community. Here she is going to Johns Hopkins University and having trouble getting connected to the local community. And so we want to be sure that we can have leading researchers, anybody on our campus, making sure that they're able to get plugged in. And several women on Twitter told her, they said, oh, you can go here. Here's my homegirl. Here's her style fee. Here you go hooked up. And she was like, that took such a load off of her, just being able to get her hair done in the community that she was now becoming a part of. Right, and so two more strategies quickly is one, providing equity in wages and salary. We know that Black women particularly are underpaid, that we always see the Black women make 68 cents on the dollar to white men. Latino women make 64 cents. I believe Asian women, is 71 cents. But getting everyone equitable pay and wages, that everyone should be paid equally and equitably for the work that they do. And then develop a mentoring program for junior and senior management, being sure that we're investing in people's talent and their growth and leadership on the trajectory of our campus, that we make it a point that when we have leadership programs or enrichment programs on campuses, that we're diversifying the people that participate in those, not just putting the same people or you only found out about the opportunity because the person before you has always been in this opportunity. Like the coordinator for this position always gets to go here. Being sure that we're making sure that opportunities are available to everyone. Right, and then reminding yourself that you're not powerless. So I know it said that developing relationships, you're not powerless. There's something that you can do. There's someone you know, like even if you get nominated all the time to serve on a search committee or something, or different task force, nominate someone else so that they can get some different experience as well. And a lot of times we get nominated for things we're just tired of doing, or we have place, or we have spaces. Actually, this person can use the skill. I'd like to nominate them for this particular opportunity. Being sure that you share your power because one, like this is me at the Office of National Drug Control Policy meeting hosted. We talked about naloxone campus, naloxone access. That is me down there in the red with the red under the red arrow. I refuse to believe. So listen, my self-esteem is pretty high, and I think I'm fabulous, right? But I do not believe that I should be the only Black woman sitting at that table talking about expanding naloxone access when there were no other there were women, and that was me from a higher education perspective. How we passed we're passing at that time we were writing policy. We passed policy now to put it on every public campus in the state of Louisiana. They all have naloxone. We have required training for RAs, students who live in campus housing, students who live in Greek facilities, for athletic trainers, counseling, health, wellness, and counseling center staff. We have that. I'm there to talk about that particular aspect, but there has to be some other people of color, indigenous populations, and that do this kind of work that should be sitting at that table when we look at it. And the Black man that's sitting at the table, he works for that office. So we got to be able to find ways to share our power and invite other people to the table. Again, I'm awesome, but I can't be the only one. And so in conclusion, I want to just remind you of three things. Leverage fictive kinship to fill staffing gaps. Look at those people who your staff and your students are on color, your staff and students of color, who they gravitate to on campus. Invite them into panels or a program. Have them share wisdom. Have introduce them to students who you may feel like maybe feeling homesick or just need a little extra push. You leverage those people on your campus. Again, I've still never forgot Miss Linda. Miss Linda was one of the environmental services workers that did our that literally cleaned the floor of our office, that did our environmental services for our office. Miss Linda asked all the time. I never forgot Mr. Eddie, who's the server at Coffee Call, where I did my dissertation. He'd always say, "Baby, you finished your test yet?" That was his way of asking me, how was my dissertation going? Finding ways to leverage those relationships on campus, and then understanding religiosity as a component of cultural competence and community building, leaning on your faith-based community, having them, a lot of times faith-based community will run programs for substance misuse prevention, recovery, things of that sort. Lean on those types of programs, gospel stations, things like that. Most gospel stations, they do free advertising. You can go in and talk to their viewers, say we have a program, or if you'd like to partner with us, do tabling, going into those types of programming, and then demonstrably valuing multiculturalism. When you recruit these diverse persons, allowing them to fully and authentically be themselves on your campus without fear of having to assimilate into whatever the dominant culture is there. Allowing people to authentically be themselves will go a long way. And so with that, I will pause for any questions if Orlando has any.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Dr. Smith. And as she said, questions can now be asked. We'll give it some time.
So, Arlen, I don't know if you've got any questions or saw any questions. If not, I've put my contact information on the screen, and I want to thank you all for having me today. I am excited to be back with you all once again.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. And we have no questions, but there's been a few comments saying wonderful presentation.
Thank you. You're all amazing. Thank you.
Okay. And for everyone that's here, please keep an eye out for an email for GoToWebinar that will come about an hour after the program. The email will have a link for you to fill out an evaluation. This evaluation will really help us with the future with planning events. Certificates will be issued within 7 to 10 business days from the webinar, and we will have the webinar available to view on the IHEC website. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.